Marriage. What are the upsides and what are the downsides of marriage for men and for women? And is there, and if so, what are the differences between being married in America and being married over here in the Philippines? That's exactly what I want to explore in the upcoming video. Okay, so marriage in America compared to marriage in the Philippines. Let's talk about America first, and I'm referring to the men's side of the story. As long as you two are compatible and you get along and you enjoy each other's company, I can't find a downside. It's nice to be married. It's nice to have that bond between the two of you, to take those vows and until death do us part. As long as everybody keeps their word, there's never a problem. In fact, when I first got married the first time, I said, this is great, I get an extra tax deduction. So I actually made a little extra money on my tax refund. I was very happy about that. The problem comes not with being married, but with getting divorced. So there's where the odds are stacked against men. And any women watching this want to argue with me on this point, feel free to pipe up. But man gets married, he is the sole or the primary breadwinner. If there is a dissolution of that marriage, well, you two are going to part ways. And the man is still going to have to give up, I think the favorite word is used is half of everything he may have toiled for. Granted, the wife may have stayed at home and raised kids, but what if she didn't? What if she was just your wife and she just stayed home and, took care of the house, so they say. And you find out that she's been fooling around or she just gets disinterested. I read that 70 some odd % of all divorces initiated in America are by women. And why the hell not? They get bored was the number one reason why they initiated it. And what do they got to lose? Nothing. What do they got to gain? A lot. Because the man is the breadwinner. Now he has to give up half of anything acquired during the marriage, the house, the cars, and that usually turns into a big quagmire somewhere along the line. But I think we can agree that he's going to take the hit. And then if there's any kind of alimony or child support awarded, should they have children, then that's going to come straight out of his check also. I've heard cases where the woman has simply taken over the house with the kids, and usually that's the man's decision that, hey, I don't want the kids to get interrupted. I want them to stay in school. I want them to stay here in the neighborhood where they have their friends, etc., etc. And so he may just continue to make the mortgage payment on that house, and yet he has to go rent himself a little one-bedroom or a studio apartment, and cars, material possessions, etc. He's also on the hook for the kids until they turn 18. Now, not such a bad deal, really, if the kids are 16 and 17 when you guys decide to split sheets. But start one off and you leave with the wife and the baby is 6 months old, you got 17 and a half years of X amount of dollars per month gonna go right out the window into them, and the woman gets the money. You're not guaranteed that the woman is even gonna spend the money on the child. And so financially, I could go on and on and on with examples, but the drift is that the burden of divorce falls much heavier on the man than the woman. Now, I understand, I have a friend right here in good old Philippines, and he was married to a doctor. And I'd never heard this one before, but he got alimony. And I forget the numbers, but it wasn't bad. It was like $4,000 or $5,000 a month because she was making $400,000 or $500,000 a year, and they had been married for a long time. And believe it or not, he was the winner. So I guess the gist of this, little video. If you're thinking about getting married and you're in America, marry rich. Just make sure she's above your pay grade. And then things might go a little smoother for you if things start to collapse on you. All right, so you got that. You got all the lawyer stuff. You know you're going in with the odds stacked against you. And God forbid it should get drawn out over petty little things. Lawyers, divorce lawyers, say what you will, they love to drag it out. They want nothing more than to have you two at odds. Because guess what? They get to clock up more and more and more hours. Myself personally, when I got divorced, it was actually quite civil. The kids were still underage. My wife came to me and she said, you know what, Paul, you've worked hard all your life and you bought this house and you've taken care of me and you've taken care of the kids. This is what I want. I want you to keep the house. I want you to keep your 401k. You earned it. I don't want to take that from you. She had a bout of consciousness there. And then she said, or conscience, she said, I just want X amount of dollars so I could put a down payment on my own little house. I said, deal. Let's go down. And we went down to the legal aid store, got all the forms, filled them out, did our thing, took them down to the court, filed it. I don't know, cost us less than $100 to pull the whole thing off. And we did just that. And we had an agreement between the two of us. She only moved about 3 miles away. She did buy a house. And we just had a loosey-goosey agreement about the children. And so she primarily kept them initially. But then as things changed and job schedules changed, I was finding myself being able to spend more and more time with them. And they would come over to my house for a couple, 3 days, and I would take them to school and all that happy stuff and feed them and, take them to the doctor, et cetera, et cetera. And then the only thing that I would do, because she simply didn't have the funds to do it, was if the kids needed something, if they needed new school clothes, if they had to go to the doctor, she really didn't have the discretionary income that at that time I happened to be pulling in. And I would gladly pay because, well, it was for the kids. I wasn't buying her a new, wardrobe. It was just for the children. All right, so I think that I got away or got off easy, but I have heard horror stories, and I'm sure you have. Horror story after horror story of guys just getting taken to the cleaners. And that's my spin on that, with the exception of my buddy that was married to the doctor. So now let's flip it over and come over here to the Philippines. Well, number one, if you get married, the Philippines and the Vatican City are the only two places on the planet that doesn't have divorce. It's outlawed. Heavily influenced here by the Catholic Church. And they've tried and tried and tried. They've tried to put amendments or changes to the law, and they get submitted and they just get knocked down because it's just not a popular topic. And nobody wants to step up and agree, yeah, it's time for us to get with the real world. So there's a lot of issues out here, particularly for women who have been married. And the only way to become single again is to get an annulment. And that is a very expensive process from what I've heard, and a very long, drawn out process, 2-3 years. And I don't know, maybe $5,000 to $10,000. I'm not really sure. I talked to one guy whose now wife had to get an annulment, and I think he hit on about $4,000 or $5,000 to make it happen. And they did have to wait 2 to 3 years to have the ink dry. However, so there's no driving force here for the women to seek or achieve or maintain any kind of financial gain if they could get divorced, because they can't. What people do out here is they simply separate. and they agree to disagree. Now, the big misnomer there is that they cannot remarry. The laws out here are really funny. Most of them exist and are not enforced on a wide, broad margin. To cohabitate with someone for a woman is against the law outside of marriage. And then the other example is if a man has a one-night stand while married, no big deal. As long as, in fact, nothing happens. In fact, if he just doesn't cohabitate, he could go over every other night, as long as he doesn't put any socks in the drawer and any evidence that he's residing with her, he's scot-free pretty much to do what he wants. The women do not have that kind of freedom. So here, the law, as far as that's concerned, sides with the men. What about a foreigner getting married to a Filipino? Well, once again, the odds, the favorable odds, fall over to the man. I can go, because I have a friend that's doing it or has done it. I can fly to Guam. If I can be a resident in Guam for 7 days, and I can have an attorney draw up divorce papers, and bada boom, bada bing, $2,000 later, plus hotel and airfare, I guess, is I'm divorced. And you know what? My wife, my Filipino wife, isn't divorced, but I'm a single guy. Now, that sounds unfair. I think it is. But there is good news on that, to a degree. The man, let's say it's me. Let's say May and I get divorced. Or I go to Guam and I divorce my wife. I've got the paperwork. I can come back to the Philippines, give her the paperwork, and then she would need to go through some myriad of bureaucracy to get that divorce recognized. Like the annulment, it could take her up to 2 years, but it wouldn't have any near the cost of an annulment. However, I could do her a solid, say, here you go, be cool, and make it happen. And so there's probably the proverbial fixer somewhere along the line, or facilitator, I guess I should say, that can push it through a little quicker, because money does talk in all places. And so that could make that happen. So there, to me, is the primary differences about being married in the Philippines and being married in America, or imagine any other country outside of the Philippines. I'm just not familiar with the laws of United Kingdom or Australia or any other place for that matter. But the marriage out here, on the positive side, is, another benefit. I have in my wallet what's called a 13A visa, which makes me a resident of the Philippines, citizen of America, resident here. So with that visa, called a 13A marriage visa, I'm free to come and go out of the country without a lot of the brain damage that I had to do when I was unmarried. An exit clearance, for example. If I was to fly back to America tomorrow, normally I would have to go to Cebu first from here in Dumaguete, get an exit clearance, or I would need to go to JRC, my friend, who has a visa consulting agency here, and he could obtain the exit clearance for me. But I'm going to have to pay his fee and the fee of the clearance itself. So that is just off my brain. I don't have to worry about it. Returning to the Philippines from, say, America, I don't have to have what's commonly referred to as a throwaway ticket or an onward ticket, because on my 13A, it says resident. Now, that 13A has to be renewed every January or February. That's the time frame that they give you every year. And the cost is 310 pesos, a little under $6 at today's exchange rate. Where under a tourist visa, I think my fees were $500 or $600 a year. So not a big incremental change. I mean, it's a massive sway in money, but the $500 or $600 never was a deal breaker for me living over here as a tourist. But it is nice. You just go down, and believe it or not, I don't just go down and renew it. My wife has to go with me because she is inviting me to stay another year. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? And I couldn't understand why they would do that, but now I do. Because in the past, and probably right now as well, there's a lot of sham marriages that have happened for the guy just to be able to stay in the country. He'll give the girl or the woman X amount of dollars or pesos. She'll marry him. They'll part ways. She's got a few bucks. He's now got this visa. But she needs to show up at immigration because as an invitation for him to stay to prevent just that, falsification and a sham or a paper marriage that didn't really take place. I mean, it took place, but you know what I'm saying. It's not fulfilled. And so that I found interesting. So that puts a little bit of power, if you want to call it that, back to the woman. But hey, if you're getting along and everything's cool, she's happy to go. At least my wife is up to this point. We'll see what happens tomorrow. All right, so that's my little spin on it. You know, I felt that in America, marriage was really just sort of a financial and emotional trap for men. And women too, to some degree. But I think you'll agree with me that at least financially, the burden is going to fall on the men. Out here, since we can't get divorced, there is no such thing as alimony. There is no such thing as child support. Now, if we were to just voluntarily split, I do believe that I have to give her 5,000 pesos a month if she's residing somewhere else. And I think I have to do that for 6 months. I'd have to fact check myself on that. But that gives you an idea of the financial obligation difference between here in the Philippines and there in America. So yes, my wife and I, we may agree to disagree. We know we can't get divorced. I leave her in the house we're in now. I boogaloo. I go rent myself another apartment somewhere. Should I choose to, which I would just continue to pay her rent and of course supplement her income because it's the right thing to do. I would never want to leave anybody out in the cold unless they had really done something rotten to me. And then, but mandatory would be 5,000 pesos a month. And I want to say it's for 6 months, but we can go ahead and call it a year just to be safe. So, I don't know, leave your comments in the comments section. Tell me what you think. You agree? You disagree? I'm sure I missed something. I always do. So feel free to drop that in there too and tell me where I screwed up in this video. All right, I'll see you in the next video.